All right, all right. Welcome, Finn, to the Inspired Idiot Show.
Thank you very much. I don't feel very inspired, so I guess I know which category I fit into.
We're all a little bit of both. I wanted to talk to you today because I'm really curious to ask you questions about your experience of growing a business out of a YouTube channel
Mhm.
and making real money with it to the point that you actually were willing to walk away and say, I don't actually want to do this anymore.
Sure. I made
I
seven
think
figures from it.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, that honestly inspires me. I know a lot of people that have a dream of building a business out of a YouTube channel, and basically, I make this content for people who feel like inspired idiots. I believe that every, so-called successful person is just an inspired idiot that didn't quit.
Yeah,
So,
man, I lean into the idiot part because as a lot of people talked about, inspiration comes and goes, but you can keep showing up every day. I can be I can be an idiot every day. I don't know if I can be inspired every day. So I mean, if there's anything I'm good at, it's just showing up again and again and again and again until just brute force life. That's, as you had something, you had some kind of like a fitness background or something, didn't you? Yeah, so I mean it's the same thing. It's like you just show up at the gym whether you feel that. Listen, the barbell doesn't know whether you're inspired or not.
you just do it.
Yep.
Yeah. I've actually found, and I've talked about this a lot in some of my content, that there are a lot of parallels between business and fitness, and it
Hmm.
takes very much the same mentality to see results in either one.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, basically, I would like to, interview people that I think are building their unrealistic life and being kind of delusionally committed, as you just mentioned. So I want to ask you some questions about that.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. The first thing that I would like to know is just what made you want to start a YouTube channel?
Well, I started in 2017 and I quit last year because I just sort of, like we talked about, I sort of hit my goals for, made enough money that like I didn't need to do it anymore and I wanted to move on to other things. Um, but I started it in 2017 because I just sort of saw that that's where the frontier for attention was at that time. I started writing when I was like 15, selling fanzines through the mail because this is like before the internet was really viable. So, when I was in high school, sold a couple thousand of them. Like, I don't know, I'd go to the post office after school and send a batch to, whatever, Des Moines, Iowa and Helsinki, Finland or whatever when I'm 17, which in hindsight is actually really, it's crazy that I did that because it's way harder to sell something. Like, how would you even sell something without the internet? I don't even, like, I couldn't do that now, but somehow I did it back then. Um, and after that, after sort of, magazines stopped being relevant, I did a bunch of blogging and I did relatively well at that. Got, I don't remember the numbers, but a couple 100,000 monthly uniques on a couple different blogs. And then I stopped doing that because, sort of the writing was on the wall with blogging. At least, there's still a place for it, but as destination websites, it just stopped being relevant. And I realized I needed to do YouTube because I went to Warp Tour 2015, I think. Warp Tour, for anyone who's not familiar, was a traveling like music festival kind of tour. They'd go to like 50 cities every year. It's like, alternative music kind of stuff. 50 cities every year, I think. And there was maybe like, 40,000 people or something at every one. And all the bands there, are very accessible and stuff. So you can just like walk up to their merch tent and talk to them or whatever. And I noticed that there was these, so there's whatever, 20 or 30 tents of all the different bands. And there's a handful of people around them. And there were a couple tents that had these crazy lines of like 100 people. And I was like, what's that? And it was like, they were YouTubers. It was like Johnny Gilbert, and some other people like that. I'm like, it's like, whoa, the lines for these YouTubers are literally 10 times longer than the ones for the bands. Okay. Cause I didn't really watch YouTube very much before. I mean, obviously I was aware of it, but I didn't really watch it because at that time I still thought of it as something that was, for kids or teenagers or whatever, which was kind of true at that time. It was starting to change, but I think it was kind of true then. But I was like, okay, well, it's obvious to me this is where the attention is. And I also at the time was working at a company called Creative Live, which was like a startup that did online education for creative people. We raised like 60 million bucks from like Chamath and Reid Hoffman and Richard Branson and a bunch of people like that. And I was on the CEO's content team, a guy named Chase Jarvis, who I've worked with for a long time. And I also worked on his YouTube channel, and I was sort of seeing how that was going up too. And I was like, okay, I should do this. I didn't ever intend it to be, you know, what it became. I just was like, well, if I can get a couple thousand subscribers, I just wanted to like sort of validate that I understood it as like a marketing channel or whatever, you know. I was like, yeah, if I could get 1,000 or 2,000 people that reliably watch my videos, that'd be cool. I'm good with that. And it, you know, took me a while to figure it out, but it ended up, you know, basically taking off and becoming way bigger than I thought it was going to be. And I was like, well, I guess I should keep doing this then. And so I, you know, kept doing it until I got to, you know, where I felt like it had kind of served its purpose and, you know, moved on. But that's why I started it, because I feel like, well, I don't feel like, I know that you need, you know, attention is sort of the necessary condition for everything else. Like if nobody knows you exist and what you do, then it's going to be pretty hard to make that into a living. And I had experienced a lot of times in my career where nobody knew who I was. You know, I've done product design and marketing, you know, for my whole career for 25 years. And I had worked on a lot of stuff that I thought was pretty cool. You know, I did a lot of stuff for like Swiffer and Febreze and Tide and Red Bull and Nike and blah, blah, blah. And, but nobody cared. You know, it's like nobody knew who I was. Nobody cared. I didn't have a very good network. And that was scary. You know, a lot of people listening can probably relate to that. It's like, well, everyone who works with me likes me and thinks that my work is good, but just uh, nobody knows who I am. So that's why I started it, to kind of change that. And to make a long story short, it worked.
But you very much focused your YouTube channel and your brand on punk music specifically, right?
More or less, yeah.
Okay. So what made you choose that particular topic? Like, were you a fan of punk music or like you could have made a YouTube channel about like anything, right?
Yeah. Well, so initially my channel was not about music. Initially it was more about business, about, you know, sort of marketing, but turns out nobody cared. Nobody, nobody was interested in hearing me talk about that. Um, and I'd done a lot of writing about that kind of music before, and I have like a very good network. I mean, I know everything about it. It wasn't necessarily like the thing I would have preferred. Um, but I knew that, you know, I had a relatively, you know, I thought I could make it work. And once I switched to that, it did work pretty quickly. So basically that's why I did it. Cause, you know, you're here to make the content that people want to watch, you know, and that's, I think, um, a thing people need to understand about content in general, but especially with, YouTube is a consumer entertainment app. And this is true of TikTok and, um, it is a consumer entertainment app. You're here to make the content they want. It is not an art project. You know, you're not here to express yourself. If you get to do that, great. And some people are able to, you know, you'll hear some people be like, just do whatever feels right to you. And if it's authentic, people connect to it. That's bullshit. That's not true. It might be true for some people, but it's not universally true. There are some people, for example, I know a guy named Nick Nocturnal that's like, you know, he just quit too, but I don't know, he has 1.5 million subscribers or something like that. What he does is 100% authentically him, and people love it. Like, I don't think he ever kind of, you know, he's not a calculating person that, you know, reverse engineers what the audience wants like I am, you know, and does it. He's just like, I just do what I want and people like it. And that's great. I love, like, that's awesome for him. And if you're one of those people where you can just show up and be yourself and people love it, that's awesome. But that doesn't work for all of us. So, you know, you have to understand it is a consumer entertainment app, just the same as if it's whatever. If you're on SNL, you know, you don't get to decide that, oh well, this week we're going to do a period drama about, you know, a mom and her daughter's troubled relationship from 1750. You know, it's like you're here to make a sketch comedy show. That's what people want.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to make a long story short, I like, obviously, like, I know about that kind of music, and of course I, you know, like it to some extent, but not necessarily the thing I would have preferred to talk about for 7 years. But, you know, it's a product, you know, same as anything else. And you're going to get sick of your product, just like every other business. You're going to get sick of your product way, 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 way before the audience ever is.
Yeah. I would totally believe that. So can you remember a time or like a moment in you growing that channel that you were like, holy shit, this is working. I got to
Yeah.
double down on this.
Yes. So, if anybody knows sort of this corner of YouTube, like this sort of guitar world, there's a guy named Fluff, Ryan Bruce, who's been doing guitar music forever, or guitar videos forever. I think he maybe since 2013 or something like that. I was sitting next to him at a wedding, and just sort of this is before my channel really had started to work, brainstorming some ideas for, what I should do with my videos. And we came up with something. He's like, "Oh, you should do a video about, basically like breaking down how this band got successful." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea. We should do that." And I am an idiot, as we discussed, but when people who have done a thing that I want to do give me advice, I listen to them. And he had maybe 300,000 subscribers at the time. I had like 400. So I was like, okay, well, if Fluff is giving me the suggestion, I'm going to take it. So I did that, and that video like got, I don't know, 10,000 views in a couple days or something, which for me at that time was huge. And I was like, okay, I think we see, I think we see where this needs to go. So I just kind of doubled down on that for the next 6.5 years, and that's that. But I mean, in general, that's the pattern you're going to see with, I'll say YouTube, but it really applies to like content in general, or just business in general. Is like what you're going to be doing in the beginning is putting out a lot of hooks, and you don't know, you're fishing, you're going on a fishing trip, you're putting out a lot of hooks, and you don't know which one the fish are going to bite on. Um, and once they do, drop everything else and focus 100% of your attention on that thing, and don't blink until you're very, 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 very sure that you've gotten 100% or 90% of what you can out of that lane. Don't change until then. Like in that beginning part where you don't know, like you're just trying to find one thing that works. And as soon as you do, that's what you commit to. And you don't know what that's going to be. Like you can make a lot of guesses. Nobody knows.
Specifically around the hook.
I don't mean hook as in like, maybe I used the wrong word. Hook as in like an intro to a piece of content. I mean hook metaphorically as in if you're on, like what's the thing people, what are they interested in? And it might
Right.
be like, I wouldn't have guessed. I wouldn't have guessed that the thing that ended up, sort of being popular is what it was. But that's the way, that's the way it works for every business I've ever been part of. It's like, oh, people like that? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense to me. And honestly, one of the reasons that I like talking to you and I appreciate your perspective on things is because you are very blunt and straightforward about like, this is what I did, this is why I did it, this is the reality that I found to be true, and I'm pretty unfiltered about that. And I'm curious, like when you told your audience then that, because you were very open, you're like, I made enough money, I don't want to do this, I never
Yeah.
really loved it. Were you concerned about your fans or your audience turning on you, or did you just feel like,
Well, I
no,
did
they're
like one
blunt truth?
interview with, I mean, I did one interview about this with on a small channel that I basically did it as a favor because it wasn't a big channel and he's a nice guy. I don't really know him very well, but I said yes because he's nice. I didn't really think anybody would see it. Most of his interviews get a couple hundred views. So I didn't really think anybody was. I didn't think anybody was going to see it. And sometimes I forget, that in this particular corner with fandoms in general, they are dominated by people who are mentally ill. Like if you look at the way all fandoms, online fandoms, like sort of look at the nature of that discussion, and you're going to see that all of those people are mentally ill. The people who are participating in the discussion, I don't mean the ones who are just passively watching, but if you go read the comments on a video about anything, anything, fandoms in particular, whatever. It could be, I don't know, what's the K-pop Demon Hunters? I've never watched that, but I know it's popular. I guarantee you the conversation around it is insane. Um, so you just have to kind of understand that that's the nature of, fandoms. And I foolishly said something that would be a totally normal thing to say if you're talking to like your neighbor, like, "Oh, would you stop doing YouTube?" And I'm like, made enough money from it, just kind of wanted to move on. And they'd be like, "Oh, right on, cool, okay." Like just the same as quitting any other job. You're like, just kind of want to try something else. Made enough money, want to do something else now. Oh, that's awesome, good for you. Well, in mentally ill internet world, that's not the way it works. You're not supposed to. Your entire life, their identity revolves around media consumption. Like that's who they are. Is they are consumers of whatever, Pokemon cards or heavy metal music or, K-pop, whatever it is. And so if you say something that shows you don't value that thing as much as they do, they interpret that as an attack on who they are because that's their identity. And so then they dysregulate and go crazy. So that's what happened. And that's on me for not being, more guarded about what I say. It's like, so for, if anybody wonders why, um, corporate execs or whatever are very tight-lipped and very careful and they stick to a script, this is why. Because you say one thing that isn't even wrong, because I don't think what I said is wrong at all. But if you say, you know how the mob is going to react in certain situations, and if you give them the slightest little crack of daylight, they're going to run in there with their torches and pitchforks. And so now there's, I don't know, go search, there's videos with millions of views about how terrible I am, and it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad that you brought that up, because I have kind of found that to be true as well. Like, for example, this was probably like a year ago, I was getting really deep into exploring like the public school system, because I found getting into entrepreneurship, I just started having a lot of thoughts of like, it's weird that I wasn't prepared for this in school, or it's weird that
Yeah.
school kind of taught me the opposite of what I'm finding to be true about success. So I was going down this rabbit hole, and I made a post on one of my social medias saying something along the lines of, it's really interesting to me that society has kind of taught us to resent wealthy people.
Yes.
Why are we teaching people this system that's clearly not working for most people, instead of just, you know, teaching people how to actually be wealthy?
No,
And
you
it
said,
was,
oh no, oh
yes,
no.
yeah. And I realized like
Oh,
within
my sweet summer child, you can't,
with
you can't suggest that maybe rich people aren't evil.
yeah, within a few hours, I remember being at the gym and my sister was like, "Your post is getting a lot of people upset." And I genuinely didn't understand why. And then I went and looked at the comments, and people were just coming at me saying I was a privileged white woman. This is a stupid question to ask. And like really just,
So you support fill in the blank horrible thing?
yeah, yeah. And it
Yeah.
was a very interesting, like, I will never forget about that, because I remember thinking like, oh, people are interpreting this in a way that I would not have predicted that they would
Assume that
interpret
they
it.
will interpret it in the most distorted, like bad faith way you can possibly imagine.
Personal attack, yeah.
Yes, the worst possible. Imagine the absolute most twisted, like mean spirited, negative way you can interpret it. Everything you say will be taken that way.
Yeah. So for you, like, I'm assuming that was a very big kind of aha moment for you. Were there any particular reactions that you were like really
I mean,
surprised
I've
by?
had that happen to me dozens of times before. That was the worst example of it, probably. But I mean, I've had that happen to me dozens of times before. So I'm not. It's not my first rodeo, and I wasn't surprised by it. I was just like, oh boy, here we go again. Okay.
Mhm. So what was that process like? Like, if you could walk me through it when you were like, I have enough money to walk away from this. What did that look like from the day that you decided I'm going to quit YouTube to then doing those interviews and having those kind of reactions come up? What was that like?
Uh, I mean, it's happened to me so many times. I don't even really. I know it's unpleasant, but I mean, it's happened to me so many times. I'm just like, whatever. The mob is after me again. Whatever.
Right. Okay. Maybe I'll rephrase that. What was it like, I guess, to get to a point with your YouTube channel that you were like, I've made enough money, I can walk away? Like, did that feel like financial freedom? Like, what? Because I think a lot of people kind of dream about that, like making a
Yep.
YouTube channel, making enough money to be like, I'm good.
Well, if you want to make money, like it worked out well for me, but I would not suggest. I would not suggest YouTube. Like, there's a lot of easier ways to make, seven figures. Let's put it that way. Lots and lots of easier ways that I would suggest doing instead of that. YouTube is great. Don't get me wrong, but if money is your main motivation, there are other ways to do it that there are lots of other ways that are a lot easier. But yeah, I mean, like, freedom is a good way to do it. I'm a very kind of, I'm a big planner. So, I have a good friend that's a financial analyst, financial planner. And, he's known me for years and he knows all the details and all that stuff. So I sort of ran it by him and ran it by my wife and everything. And, I was like, hey, is it, asked him, like, here's the situation, here's how much money you make from other things, like, is that good? And he's like, bro, you could quit tomorrow, like, you're good, don't even worry about it. And which I sort of knew was true, but I wanted to hear it from somebody I trust. And told my wife same thing, like, hey, I'm gonna stop doing this, so I'll make a lot less money, but we'll still be fine because here's why. And she's like, great, yeah, you should do it. And then I was just sort of made the call of like, I was going to I quit in September of last year. I was going to try to ride it out until the end of the year, but I was just so over it. I was like, fuck this. I'm just fucking, I think this is going to be my last video. Fuck this. Fuck it. I'm done. And that was that. I just told my manager, like, hey, we had a bunch of brand deals I can, in the queue. And I was like, hey, I think I'm going to bail early. Sorry. But he's like, oh, good. I get it.
Nice. So you had a manager that primarily helped you with the YouTube business?
Yeah. So I did probably, I don't know, somewhere around 300 or 400 brand deals, which was, that's a good amount of money. So, when people are like, hey, and this video is brought to you by NordVPN, if you're concerned about your internet safety, blah, 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 blah. I did all those, like all the VPNs and Factor, and shout out to Factor. They were a big supporter, and DraftKings also a big supporter. Thank you guys. And I don't know, hundreds. So he brought me all of those. So he would just queue them up. I did 4 videos a week, 1 video on my main channel and 3 on my second channel. And in 2021, I think was the peak of it. I was doing like 4 brand deals a week, which is crazy. And like, that's a lot of money. That adds up real fast. It's like thousands of dollars a week just from brand deals. And that was hard, but I was like, I'm gonna fucking, it's like in one of those game shows where like they're in like the phone booth and there's just like money and they, have 10 seconds to grab as much money as they can. It's like that. I'm like, I know this is not going to last. So let's just make the most of it while we can. It was hard, but I'm glad I did it. So yeah, I mean, I felt the only thing I really felt bad about is sort of bailing on that because, that's part of his income. And so me walking, and I know he can give those deals to like other people and stuff, but I feel bad about that, but he's a big boy. He's fine. We're good friends. So, he's a big boy.
So what
But,
about that felt hard to you?
the hard part to me is just because of, the way I grew up. I'm very sort of, I'm always sort of trying to avoid bad things happening in the future. That's sort of like my fundamental thing that because to make a long story short, my family's a bunch of drug addicts and criminals and shit. So like I'm used to people dying and going to prison and, I mean, like my aunt murdered my uncle and then like she she had a psychotic thing and killed my uncle. And then like a month or 2 ago, maybe 2 or 3 months ago now, my neighbor had the same thing happen and killed his wife and killed himself. And so I'm just like, I'm very used to like bad things happening out of the blue. So that's sort of my fundamental motivation. So it was hard. The hardest part for me, like I literally went to a therapist to say like, help me like make this decision to quit. Cause like I feel like logically, I know that I can do this. Like financially, logically, I know I can do this, but I don't feel safe enough to do it yet. And I know I need to do it. So help me, help my nervous system, because that's really what it is, like literally it's your nervous system. Like help me feel mentally okay with this. I literally went to a therapist for this and it helped a lot.
That's powerful. It's like just reframing it so that you can actually do it so it doesn't feel like it's destroying you to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Cause like it's really hard for me to like turn down money, because I want to like build up this castle to be safe against bad shit happening. And I built, it's not like fuck you desert island money, but it's enough that like realistically is fine. If I never made another dollar, we could pay our family bills for like 20 years. So like intellectually, there's like no reason to worry, but I didn't feel safe yet. And I was like, okay, I see the problem. And I've seen this pattern in other people, think about how much, like, let's take, let's take like Ariana Grande, for example. Obviously, there's something going on with her. She does not seem to be in a great place mentally, you know, understandably, because a lot of bad things have happened to her. She should probably chill on working. You know, she should probably quit working for a while and figure out whatever's going on with her. You know, lots of you see this with lots of celebrities and CEOs and stuff. They're like pathologically driven to work when they don't need to and actually shouldn't, because they should be focusing on, you know, their relationships or personal health, mental health or physical health or whatever. You know, it's like you have millions of dollars, but you're like obese and your marriage is in a terrible place. Like you should probably focus on those things. And I very consciously don't want to make that pattern, you know? And so I needed help sort of getting over that hurdle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Like everything you're saying is it's taking me in a whole other direction than I expected this conversation to go. But I appreciate it because I am absolutely one of those people that keeps telling myself that I need to get to a certain dollar amount to be safe. And I've told myself this around having kids. Like in my mind,
Yeah.
I have this perpetual thought that I don't feel safe to have kids in,
Well,
where
you're
we're
not
at.
wrong. I mean, there's some level of that. What I always try to do is like, there's some level of this that's rational, and then there's another level that's not rational. And I just want to, I try to like be honest with myself of like where that line is, you know, because it's true. Like my mom had me when she was not married, single mom, alcoholic, on welfare. Like, mom, why the fuck did you do that? This was not a good decision. Please don't, like, why did you do that? And she did it on purpose, you know, like it was not like an accident, like probably not the wisest decision. So like there's some level of that that's rational, but do you need $5 million? No.
Well, and I think that's part of the problem too, is that the goal often moves, right?
Always.
We tell ourselves like, oh, once I get to 10K a month, I'm going to be good. I'm going to be solid. And then you get to 10K, at least for me. And I was like, it's not solid for what we're trying to do
Yep.
moving forward
Exactly. You
though.
feel a little better,
Yep.
but you don't feel the way you thought you would when
Yeah.
you're like, man, if I made 10K in a month, I wouldn't fucking worry about anything. You worry 5% less.
Yeah.
And if you got to 100, I bet you'd worry another 5% less. But there's the irrational stuff. Like you always hear people like, oh, it's easy to hear when you hear rich people say money doesn't make you happy. I'm like, well, yeah, because they know,
Yep. Yeah.
you know, or like there's that one TED lecture, which I've never watched, but it's some beautiful woman saying like, you know, that being beautiful doesn't make you happy, you know? And, you know, of course, someone's like, oh, privilege, blah, blah, blah. Well, again, she would know.
Yeah. I think
So,
the easiest way to try to discredit what somebody's saying is to slap them with a label like privilege. I think we kind of use it today
yeah,
term to like, well, what you're saying doesn't count though because you're privileged for X reason, and I think
yeah,
it's kind of a cop out of debate.
it's bullshit. I mean, obviously there is some truth there, but here's my perspective on it is, anyone who is born as an able-bodied person in the current year in a Western country won the fucking lottery, because there are kids like in the Philippines and India that literally live in a garbage dump, literally. And like those kids are fucked. And I feel terrible for them. And that's sad. And we should all like, let's get off the fucking pity pot. If you got a fucking iPhone, you know, and you live in a Western country, like, what do you want? Again, if you're an able-bodied, I understand, you know, if people with disabilities is a different conversation, but if you're an able-bodied person with a fucking iPhone, like, what else do you need? Like, that's literally all you need to be a multimillionaire.
But
That's it.
that's why I'm particularly like in I resonate with what you said about like you chose to go to a therapist to work on your nervous system regulation because even though you were making great money with your YouTube channel, you still were like, I don't feel safe to leave. So you were not living in what it sounds like you weren't living in lack, but you were convincing yourself that you were. Like it's not safe to leave yet. I need more.
Exactly. And it's because of all the stuff I talked about, because I'm used to, you know, like getting a phone call like, oh, your uncle went to prison, your uncle got murdered, your stepsister died, you know, whatever. One of my other friends went to prison for being involved in a murder. Like, it just like go down the fucking list of all these things that have happened, like not happened to me, but around me, that I just sort of understandably, my brain has pattern matched to life as like, oh, something really bad is going to happen out of the blue, and you need to, and if you're not prepared for that, it's going to knock you on your ass. Um, which is not wrong, because that is what has happened around me. But and I have and that has been the thing that, made me able to do what I've done, which is like, I will fucking brute force life, and I will never fucking ever admit defeat, or like, I will never ever admit defeat ever, no matter what. Um and that's a good thing, but there's another time at which that becomes no longer adaptive, and so for all of us, you need to sort of understand when your strengths become weaknesses and vice versa. My wife is very like chill and patient and relaxed, and like, that's amazing. She would not, and I value that about her a lot. On the other hand, she would not be able to do what I do because she doesn't have the same level of intensity that I do. So, but there's a time where, I need to be more like her and she needs to be more like me. And, it's just understanding when strengths become weaknesses and vice versa.
Yeah, I think what you said there, though, that she is a little bit more relaxed, she has probably become more that way because you are that brute force person. And I've seen,
Yes.
and I'm basing that on like what I've seen in my partner and I, that like when there are times where I feel more relaxed because I see him working a lot harder and I feel like I can relax. So I
Yeah.
think
Well, like her
it
dad,
swings.
I really admire her dad a lot. So they're from Vietnam, and her dad, their whole family was in a communist re-education camp, which is basically a prison camp. Like, well, not basically, it's a prison camp where like they had to fucking eat grasshoppers and shit. And it was obvious that they were going to like die there if they didn't get out. So he broke them out of this prison camp, stole a boat, got them to the Philippines. From the Philippines, they lived in a refugee camp in Malaysia for a couple of years. And it makes me emotional just thinking about how hard it must have been, because they had like 4 kids. Lived in this refugee camp for 3 years, I think, maybe 2 years. Came to the U.S. and he was probably 40 at the time, I think. Then he got a degree in computer science, and was an engineer for the Washington State Patrol for whatever 20 years, and retired recently. So the reason why she is able to be like that is because her dad did this fucking superhumanly difficult shit. And that's not invalidating her or anything. It's just like, it's what you said, is like, and you don't need two people of my level of intensity. That's not necessary or good. I don't, we don't need that. So I think there's a lot to be said for just like, the heading here of all this is like, I would say like, understanding who you are, why you do the things you do, and sort of how to guide those in, functional rather than dysfunctional directions.
Yeah, I relate to the the idea that your greatest strengths can also become your greatest weaknesses because
Mhm.
I've had that thought about myself many times. It's yeah, I get
I
that.
mean, like the kind of people that are like, oh, don't worry, everything's going to work out. Like, well, how? Why? I'm glad your life has been such that you can just shrug and assume everything's going to work out. But it's because somebody like me fucking made it work.
So do
I
you
mean,
think
this is reality. I mean, I'm glad that's not a bad thing for these people, but just understand there's no fucking magical mechanism by which it would just work out. You know what I mean? Why? How? Like, you think someone is just going to come along and like hand you enough money to have a child? Like, just like, Canada's fucking, I don't know where you live, but like BC is fucking expensive, you know? Like, I would be worried about that. I mean, like, a shitty house in BC is like $2 million.
yeah, BC is expensive.
Yeah. So, do you think there's some magical scenario in which they're just going to hand you like a nice, chill suburban life in BC?
Mhm. So
How would that happen?
when you think about like that kind of narrative that was running in your head of like, I'm always prepared for bad things to happen. I need to make sure I'm safe. Do you think that the idea that you were telling yourself is a certain amount of money is going to make me safe from bad things affecting me?
Yes. Which is logically true. And I hit that number, and that's when I said, okay, I know that rationally this is true, so now I need to I need to actually do this. Even though like I don't feel my brain is telling me that like it's not there, it is there, so I need help pushing myself off the ledge, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting, like, I've had this thought myself that, there's a line somewhere in between giving yourself grace that you're doing enough and you're gonna get where you're going versus enabling yourself to just not do the work, and I think that
Yes.
that's what I've thought where, people say, "Just trust that it's all gonna work out, you can relax." The way that my brain works is I'm like, well, if I'm not fucking working at it, then I can't just sit here and cross my fingers and assume it's going to work out. I don't believe that.
Because it's not true.
Yeah,
Because it's not fucking true. Now, I'm not saying everyone should work 24/7. Like, don't take that the wrong. But like, you have a goal, you work backwards from it, and you're either on track to that goal or you're not. You
yeah.
know, it's as simple as that.
You're either doing the thing or you're not doing the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like in fitness terms, like you got a bodybuilding show in whatever 3 months. Are you on track to be on stage in that condition or not? And you can't fix it a week out.
Mhm. So, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about coming into this was I'm curious to get your stance on this having the experience you have. Do you feel like there's a lesson here for people to like be passionate about their work or do you think it's okay to just say I did it for the money and just own that?
Well, everyone's different, and I think again, this goes back to sort of understanding who you are and how your brain works. There's understand the goal is to be happy. So let's work backwards from there. Is like understand what makes you happy. So for me, like what I want is what I have now, which is like we live in a unremarkable, decent, but like unremarkable house in like the burbs, and we go to Costco and Target with our kid, and like that's all I want. It's all I ever wanted out of life. I don't care about. I don't. I don't need or want a nicer standard of living from that. I don't really care about like getting external validation from people. Like it doesn't. I don't give a shit if I'm not motivated by those sort of like whatever ego things. And so I just thought, well, we live here, and I need this amount of money to like to afford that. So like that's what I know that what makes me happy is like stability. Like let's like big picture, that's what makes me happy is stability. For other people, it might be creativity, like or whatever it is. But I want stability because I didn't have that growing up. So that's what sort of I was working towards. And for other people, it might be creativity. And so you need to build that life, but just understand what actually makes you happy and design and create the life that you want. Like that's it, which, people might think that that sounds like crazy or something, but I know so many people that have done it. It's not crazy. I mean, I don't want to be like, the manifest person or whatever. Like you can literally do whatever the fuck you want. Like within reason. Like I'm never going to be a pro basketball player, obviously, but like pretty much you can do whatever the fuck you want.
I think that a perception that I have though is that I can do whatever the fuck I want as long as I'm making enough money to do it. And I think
Yeah,
that
but you can make as much money as you want. If you decided, I don't know you that well, but I know we've talked enough. Like if you really decided like you wanted to build a company worth $100 million and then, and still own 5% of it and blah 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 whatever, like you could do that. I'm not saying it's 100% definitely it will happen, but like you are capable of that. I'm sure of it.
yeah, that's that was one of the biggest intrigues of talking with you and hearing your story was I get very interested in people's money mindsets as they, kind of climb success and as they get to those milestones and realize, "Oh, that actually didn't do for me what I thought it was going to do for me. The experience was very different." I think I
Yeah.
need to remind myself of this often.
Well, tell me more about that. I'm sensing that there's something here about money mindset that you feel like you need to work on.
Yeah, I think so. I think that I still feel very like limited by money in life and I think I relate to a lot of the things that you said of like I need to get to a certain amount to feel safe and I do think there is validity to
Yep,
that
there is.
because for sure if I want to bring a child into this world, I want to know that I am able to support them.
Yep.
But I think happiness also matters to me a lot too and I've learned in my own experience of building a business like I think you and I both seem to have kind of type A personalities where we like take charge, we want to plan, we want to make it happen. We don't rely on like everything's going to work out.
Yep.
No, I have to make it work out. That's where my brain goes. So I think I struggle with like always feeling like I'm not doing enough. And I think it is very money driven because I keep telling myself I need to be making more money in order to live the life I want to live, in order to feel the way I want to feel.
Well, I mean, that's not wrong. I mean, again, like same thing. Like I said, I want to live this way. And I do love it. It does make me happy. Um, so like that's not wrong. Um, you know, but at some point you will, I think, the place you're at in life, like you're still sort of pushing towards that. And I think like you shouldn't feel like unhappy per se, but you should feel urgency to get there because you're trying to do something difficult. But at some point you will get there, and then you're going to need to learn how to turn that off, or you know, rechannel it or manage it in some way or whatever. Um, but I think it doesn't seem like it's hurting you in any way to feel this way. There's the quote of like, feel the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. I would rather feel the pain of discipline any day, because you can always quit. Like once you've made enough money, you can always quit. What you don't want is to be like when my mom died, she was 69 and she had like 30 grand saved for retirement. What the fuck are you going to do with that in Washington state? What are you going to do with 30 grand? I was almost relieved that she died in a way, because it was like, I don't know what she was going to do. I really don't. And you can't fix that at 69. You can't. Um, so I don't think it's wrong to feel that way. I guess what I would say to the younger version of myself, and maybe to you, I don't know you well enough to know if this is true, is like, just understand, like, especially if you're wired the way we are, you can make any amount of money that you want. It's up to you. Like I guarantee you it's possible. It's not gonna be easy, of course, but like there's a way to do it. Like just think about how many AI companies have raised, I don't know, in total, they've probably raised like $1 trillion or close to it. Could you peel off a tiny fraction of that, which for you would be $8 million or something? Like if you hustled hard enough, could you get $8 million out of the, trillion, the hundreds of billions? Fuck yes, you could. Fucking, of course you could. Now, maybe you don't want to do that. That's fine. But like, you think about it that way. Like, is there a world in which you could peel off $8 million from that 900 billion that's been raised? Of course. Of course. Like it is of course, 100%. The person who, like, this is not expected, but I want to thank him for it. The person who really flipped that switch for me of all people was Joel Madden from the band Good Charlotte. Which I did not, and he's a very smart guy. So like, I don't mean to like make it sound like I just didn't expect that to come from him. I was talking to him about this, whatever, a couple years ago. And I was like, well, I don't know if I can do this or that. And he's like, stop. He just interrupted me. He was like, bro, you can make as much money as you want. And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, you're right. And just the way he put it to me like that, I was like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And another person I need to give a lot of credit for that too is the CEO of Creative Live, Chase Jarvis, who I still work with on a lot of stuff. Is like, I've just seen him. When I met him in 2002, he was like a photographer, mostly doing sort of outdoor sports stuff, like ski sort of stuff, and he did well there. But then he went on to do a bunch of other shit, became probably one of the top 10 or so commercial photographers in the US, and then started Creative Live, raised $60 million for us. I think the company made over $100 million before he sold it to Fiverr in 2022, I think. And so I've seen him just climb all these mountains over and over and over and over and over again. And he's like from the same area as me. Like he's from Bothell, Washington. I'm from Snohomish. Like we're about the same age. And I know how he grew up. He didn't grow up, his dad's a cop. Like my dad's a corrections officer. Like we grew up the same kind of way in the same area. And I've seen him do all this shit. And he's like naturally a very charismatic person in a way that I'm not, but still it's like, I've seen him do all this shit. I've watched him do it. I'm sitting in the room with him while he did it, so I know it's possible.
Yeah. And I think you touched on something there that's really cool too, though, is that a lot of your perceptions of what's possible for you are very heavily influenced by the people that you've been surrounded by. So
Yep.
you having that conversation with Joel Madden that probably made it a lot more real for you because you're like, "Oh, fuck, I'm talking to somebody who has lived this." And so if you're not surrounding yourself with people who have lived things that you wanna do, you're
Yep.
probably going to think a lot smaller about what's possible for you.
Yep. Yep. 100%. 100%. I mean, when you're around people who are like you, again, like I didn't know Benji and Joel back in the day, but they're friends of friends. They were like, I know where they came from and stuff. And like, I've seen them do this. I saw Chase do this. I've seen other people do this. And it's like, well, they're not so different from me. If they did it, why can't I do it?
Yeah. So when you, I guess what like you decided to going back to you making the decision to leave YouTube, what have you since pivoted to? Because I assume that you didn't stop YouTube and then were just like, I'm gonna do nothing.
No, no, I couldn't do that even if I wanted to. Um, so the whole time I've been a partner in a company called the URM Academy that does online education for music producers. I do like basically all our product management and marketing. So we have a few thousand paying members from all over the world. It's think of it like Skillshare, but we teach specifically like how to record and mix music. So that's I've always made enough that I could live off of that income alone. But I kept doing it like not I didn't really need the money when I was doing YouTube because I made more from YouTube, but I kept doing it because I wanted to keep those skills sharp. Because I never wanted to be a YouTuber. I like building products and I like getting people to use them and buy them. So I kept doing that. So I now have more bandwidth to do that. And then I've also, before I quit YouTube, I started pushing harder on LinkedIn, like a few months before so that I would have that sort of audience, built in. And so I do a lot of the consulting stuff there. And I've had plenty of months there where I've made enough, not as much as I did on YouTube, but not too far off, enough there where I easily could live off of that income too. And again, I just proved, I mean, it was kind of scary, but I just proved to myself. I remember the first time I had a month, I did like 15 grand or something, from consulting. I don't remember what month, but relatively soon I was like, shit, okay, I guess I can just make money here. I guess I know how to do this now. And now it was very clear to me, like if I wanted to make more money, I know exactly what I would do. I know exactly who I would reach out to and what I would say, and like the path is crystal clear in my head.
Nice. So do you feel like going through that kind of resulted in like an identity shift for you?
For sure. I'd already made it to some extent, but like, I mean, I quit a thing that was very fucking hard to build and I made a lot of money from, and like, I built this castle that was fucking really hard to build. Um, and I walked away from it and I wasn't sure if I could build a new castle. And I did very quickly, much faster than I thought. Like I don't remember exactly when the first time I had a 10K month, which is like, that's sort of like a good barometer for, I would say, like if you're doing well as a consultant. I don't remember the first time that I had a 10K month from it, but it was pretty fast. Probably within a few months. And, it was when I was still doing YouTube. And I remember just saying to my wife, like, damn, I just made like 11 grand this month from this stuff. Like, this is a very easy decision now. There's definitely no reason why I should keep doing YouTube knowing that I have this. Like, for sure I should quit.
Like doing that consulting work almost felt easy in a way?
Well, I just knew that I had another thing, since I didn't know. I still make money from YouTube from like the videos, just people watching them is obviously a lot less than I made before. I didn't know, no, I mean, I didn't know like if I was going to make like 1% less or 99% less. I didn't know. It's about 80% less. So a lot less, but it still is free money. But yeah, basically just that I knew I had proven to myself already that I built a new thing that was way more fun. And now my network is full of awesome people like you and other people that like it makes me very happy to interact with you and everyone else. Is like, it's awesome. I love talking to people like you. Whereas like in, sort of music, it's like a drag interacting with those people because they're so dysfunctional and negative and shit. And so trapped in so much distorted thinking that it's like, I don't enjoy interacting with them because they're like dragging me toward the bad version of myself. And like, I have to like keep their like negative energy at bay, if that makes sense,
Hmm.
Um, and I'm not putting them down. I'm not judging. I'm just saying like, it is what it is. Whereas, the people, I don't know, probably true for you too, I hope, but the people I talk to now through LinkedIn is like, it's awesome. They're all so cool and driven and goal oriented, and like they're all awesome people. I love talking to them, and it's really inspiring. And I look forward to talking to them every time.
Yeah.
And like that alone, even money aside, like just that alone is like a life changing. And I think about it now of like, man, I used to spend all day just talking to the most just people that do not make me happy. Let's put it that way. And now, like, man, I just talked to, I don't know, like one of my, you probably not won't remember it, but there's a site called Thrillist that was like a sort of to do popular like travel site. Like I've been working with the founder of Thrillist, and I'm helping like one of my other clients who's like basically an investor do outreach, and I'm going through like the contact list. I'm like, oh, this is the fucking co-founder of Lyft. Holy shit. Like, okay.
Yeah.
um, just the people that, and not to say I'm not one of these people that just like clings to big names. It's not like that. But point being that, that's just sort of like we were talking about earlier. The people you surround you're going to raise or lower to their level, whatever it is, and just being in the orbit of people like that just makes me feel so much better. And I know brings out the best in me.
Yeah. The analogy that I say is that I kind of see everybody as either a pile builder or a hole digger. And I think
Mm-hmm,
you
mm-hmm.
meet people that like everybody's got a shovel, everybody's grinding at something, and some people are trying to stack and they're trying to build their pile bigger, and they meet other people doing it and they like will try to lift each other up. And then you get people that are digging holes and they're talking shit about other people and complaining about life. And if you hang around with people that are digging holes, you will be in the hole.
Yep. As or more plain language, hang out with 9 broke motherfuckers and you'll be the 10th.
Yeah. So the last thing that I want to ask you, because I want to be respectful of your time, I always say that I consider somebody an inspired idiot if they are trying to build their, quote unquote, unrealistic life. They're like, I have no fucking idea how to get there, but they're committed to figuring it out
Mm-hmm.
anyway. So, having the experience that you have, what would you share with those people, or if you could give them a piece of advice?
The number one thing you can do to like create positive change in your life is to talk to other people. That's it. So like LinkedIn DMs, cold emails, DMs on any whatever. It doesn't matter. Like just talk to them. Like the way I met Chase from Creative Live is I was doing printing at the time. I made like $11 an hour. It was a horrible, like dead end. Like I did printing from the time I was 15 till I was 23. I think it sucks. And I felt very trapped in there. And we printed something for him for an ad agency that he owned at the time, and it kind of, to make a long story short, we screwed the job up. I didn't do the printing, but they screwed it up, and he was sort of not happy with it. And they were like, "Can you talk to him because you're better at talking to people?" Okay. So while we were figuring it out, I was just making conversation with him, and he was telling me about the agency, and I was like, "Damn, this is cool. Like, I want to do this." And so I just called him like later that day or the next day or something. I was like, "Hey, this is probably crazy, but we talked earlier and it sounds like you guys are doing cool shit. And I just thought I'd see if you had a job for me." And he said no, not because he didn't like me, because they were small and didn't have money. And I ended up getting laid off shortly after that. And I was like, "Hey, good news. I can work for free." And he's like, "Okay, then let's do it." And so then that was my foot in the door, and I did end up getting paid. Not that much, but enough. And I was just because and by the way, I had done other things. Made other calls like that before that went nowhere, but that one worked out. And all you need is just one person to say yes, and it can completely change your life. And I've worked with him for over 20 years now. Um, and that's just one example. There's tons of other examples. Like, I don't know I don't remember how I ended up getting on the phone with Joel Madden, but I did, and fill in the blank. It's happened to me so many times. So, if you have an unrealistic dream, just the best thing you can do is to put yourself physically in the same room as these people. So if you can go to any kind of IRL event, that's always 100% the best thing you can do. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. I don't love being around groups of people either, but it is the best thing you can do. Like if you have, put it this way, let's say there's 100 people that want to work with Kelsey, and 99 of them are only people you know from the internet, and there's one person who you have met in person and chatted with for even 10 minutes. I bet you that person's going to go to the top of the stack. Now, and then there's another, whatever, 20 people that you've talked to on the internet. They're the next people in the stack. And then there's the other 79 that are just anonymous people. It's like building relationships is the way you get yourself to the top of that stack. So, and there's a million, like we're doing right now. There's a million, like if you ever need something from me, will always say yes, and I'll do it if I can, because we know each other now. So, that's the best thing you can do. Like, I know everyone wants to like automate shit and hack this and blah, blah, blah. Cool. That's great. But talking to other people is 100% always the fastest way to like create life-changing events. So do that as much as you can.
But specifically, I think you hit something that needs to be elaborated there, because one of the things I coach people on is prospecting, because when I was growing my agency, I was just very good at it. And I didn't really understand why until I started talking to other people about the results I was getting. And they were like, holy shit, you get how many people to respond to you? And it's because I would reach out to people that I genuinely wanted to help
Yes.
in some way, and I would offer
Yes.
to help them. And where people go wonky with prospecting is they are
Try to
reaching out.
take.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
transaction to them. So when I ask people, well, why are you reaching out to this person? They're like, well, I don't know, because they're in this industry and
Because they want their money.
exactly. And I'm like, well, that's why they feel that,
Yeah. Yep.
you know?
Yeah.
So
And there's still a way that you can pitch them, but if it's coming from a place of, hey, I do this thing, and it seems like that might be helpful to you for the following reason, they'll be like, oh, awesome, that's great, because yes, I do need somebody to help me with that. So you can pitch them in a way that's still genuine and helpful. And I'm autistic, so like I'm not capable of bullshitting. So I think that has worked in my favor, is that people know that when I'm reaching out to them and offering to help, it's always genuine. And that is the hack, is be like genuinely want to help other people.
that's awesome. Well, I think we should just leave it at that. I think that's a
Cool.
good note
Works
to
for
end it
me.
on. All right. Thank
Great.
you again for coming on the show. I'm going to go ahead and
Always
stop
great to
it.
talk. I'll
Yes.
see you.